They have this super pretty pink one that I'm obsessed with, and even lunch boxes. Oh my gosh, since when did Target get the nice hydro?
Oh boy, I am getting Stanley Cup flashbacks. Anyways, what's up guys? It's your boy Hometown. What's up my boy band back today? We're going to be talking about the Hydro Flash. So the Hydro Flash is basically like the... And so if you don't know, I already made a video about the Stanley Cup, and people were unreasonably running around like zombies over a cup. And Hydro Flash, in a few years, is going to collect dust with the Stanleys. And where do you think the Stanleys and Hydros go? They go into the ocean as waste. That is where they're going to end up at the end of the year. So if we don't down the ace, then overconsumption might genuinely destroy our planet. Like, if we don't down the ace right now, everything is gonna start splitting paths and dashing into each other, and dashing a surgical chainsaw into our brainstem if we don't stop this now. Because the two problems, ocean and waste, is going to collide, and it's going to be an unholy mix of bad things. So we might be just dooming our oceans to even more slop that we never miss out to give to the ocean for some reason. So where do you think all those Stanley Cups and Hydro Flashes, they're going to end up in dumps? They're going to end up in dumps and wastelands. By the way, I was eating while recording this, but anyways, I am genuinely getting war flashbacks from when I made a Stanley Cup video. It genuinely just made my brain ooze out of my ears just talking about the Stanley Cup, because people were being unreasonable with a cup. And Hydro Flash is one of the competitors of the Stanley, which before I made this video, I went to go do some digging about the Hydro Flash, and if it's a competitor with the Stanley, it's bound to be a lot of criticism. So the lady saying that a certain color is her favorite, the comment sections are bound to start picking on her, because everybody likes a Stanley Cup, and now the Stanley Cup is out of trend. The Hydro Flash is going to come in and become everybody's a new deal. So we have to painfully watch everybody throw new cups that weren't even like a year old out the window and start getting addicted over another cup again, and just repeat that cycle. So we are never gonna see anything popular without it having a downfall or a negative bounce bad sign. Because the Stanley Cups, they contain lead, and that is a poisonous material. So I hope Hydro Flash at least learns from Stanley's mistakes and doesn't put, literal lethal chemicals in their cups. Because at least people are fighting over something that won't probably make them grow a third arm and become half reptilian or something. At least people are going to be fighting over something that doesn't poison them from the inside out. At least people are going to be fighting against not literally just lethal chemicals. Because if people are not buying a Hydro Flash and they're sticking with the Stanleys, then they're pretty much risking their lives, basically. And I actually kind of support the Hydro Flash, weirdly enough. So comment W Hydro Flash, but the negative side is we're going to have to see everybody go berserk again. Like, this really feels like, when you stare at the screen in disbelief and you try to laugh, but if you laugh, you'll just cry, but you can't even cry, but you just stare a blank face. Yeah, that's literally me making this video right now. I am going to talk to a brick wall after making this video. That is the level of insanity this video is giving off. Honestly, Stanley Cup at its finest was just overconsumption. And with Hydro Flash, at least it's overconsumption over something that won't give you lethal chemicals, that won't make you sick, that won't make you seem like an idiot fighting over literal chemicals. Does anybody understand that the Stanley Cups and Hydro Flash are going to end up in the dumps and in the waste of the oceans, and that's just going to be more poison for the environment. So we are doing more harm than good. So unfortunately enough, we have to keep over-consumerizing until we finally learn from our mistakes. And I give you you fell for it again card. It's sitting right over here on my desk. But what I need to talk about, and I'm saying need very importantly, is how I was on the verge of insanity just figuring out that these Stanley Cups are going to end up in the ocean, which is doing more harm than good to our environment. And AI already is literally draining water. So we don't even know if we have water to put waste in and to be our natural garbage disposals when that wasn't the entire point of the ocean. Seriously. We probably aren't going to have an ocean to put all of our slop in. So we are going to learn and get rightfully scolded by people on the internet saying, hey, we told ya. So it's just so the ocean is just gonna become a landfill of waste all the time. So these Stanley Cups already contain lead, which is bad for the environment. So why not just put them in the environment? Ain't that just a jolly good old show? Tis, tis, tis. Everybody genuinely doesn't understand that that Hydro Flashes are just the Stanley Cups without chemicals. So we have to watch people go berserk again and 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 we get it now, the level. We genuinely have to watch the Hydro Flash be the new Stanley for over a year. And I genuinely don't think that our brains could even last 1 second even explaining why overconsumption is a thing. Because overconsumption shouldn't be a thing to begin with. You should only have one and one. People don't have to be people should be one and done with the Stanley Cups, and Hydro Flashes are now in their uprising. So we are now going to see the birth of Hydro Flash fanatics. And just like Stanley Cup fanatics, it is no better. The only difference is there's no lead in the cups. I just genuinely can't grasp the concept of when are people gonna learn that enough is enough? Gen Alpha is already practically rotting their brains up with technology, and when they stumble upon the Hydro Flashes on the internet, they're going to want to jump onto the bandwagon. And when they bring it to school and be like, oh, look, guys, I have a Stanley, everybody's going to be like, there's no Stanley, because people were getting bullied over having fake Stanley Cups at school. out. I just want to gouge my eyeballs out after hearing that. I genuinely want to do what the green Sprunky did. And I want a Cretabox mod. Genuinely, I just can't take this. I genuinely feel like, do I have something wrong with my ears, or did I hear that properly? Somebody got bullied over a Stanley Cup, and people are still fighting over something so minuscule and so easily replaceable as a cup. And if we keep feeding onto the stereotype that putting more useless items into people with zero brain capacities, and they're just gonna get addicted to it and just throw it out the window a few days later. And sadly enough, Hydro Flash is gonna die out, just like the Stanley Cup. Also, the Stanley Cup is already out of trend now, so Hydro Flash might be winning, but at the end of the day, they're going to be losing. So, I really don't think if we keep this concept and this stereotype of bullying people for having a cheaper, faker alternatives, Hydro Flash's profits are going to go down. Matter of fact, please don't yell at me at the comments, because I literally don't know much about the Hydro Flashes. All I know is they're competitors with the Stanley Cup, and that lady in the first minutes of the video said the pink is her favorite. And they're basically like the alternative of the Stanley Cup. And people are getting bullied over having Hydro Flashes, I guess, instead of Stanleys. So that's all I really know. So please, if you rage bait in the comments and you're known for trolling and you yell at me in the comments, I'm gonna ban you, rightfully so, from my channel. But all jokes aside, though, we need to stop before this becomes a genuine problem. Because bullying and fighting people over something so minuscule like a cup forces these parents to blow more of money that they don't have at their disposal right now on a Stanley Cup that is really expensive. So that's just gonna force the parents to do the daily grind of more work 24/7. They're gonna be working faster. If they're gonna be working the same amount of time that they work already, if not faster, because high demands for a household cup is blowing up, so we must have it. So that is gonna force them to blow more of their hard-earned money on something so minuscule that is, in a few weeks later, gonna become out of trend, and their child is now gonna feel left out because they wanted to be trendy, but now that they waited too long to finally get it, they're not trendy. So that's it for today. Yeah. Peace. Also, by the way, the reason why today's episode was about the Hydro Flash is because I actually wanted to do another Stanley video, but I just couldn't keep up with the insanity of making a Stanley video. And because I know so little about Hydro Flash and nobody's actually physically fighting over it, I think it's way better than Stanley at its finest. So genuinely, I support Hydro Flash. Go buy a Hydro Flash cup. By the way, this video was not sponsored by Hydro Flash. I sponsor a VPN called Super VPN. Use it. We all love the internet, but we don't want to get viruses. So to keep those viruses out of our way, use Super VPN.